Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to day 3 of Optia's Week at the Park. And as you can see here on the screen, we're not with Peter Tabbins, but we have Sandy Shaw here, MPP for Hamilton, Ancaster, Dundas, and the NDP's, Ontario NDP's Environment, Conservation and Parks Critic. So we'll be in very good hands with Sandy this morning. I have also on the screen with me, while I'm at it, Brian Watson. Brian is partner at Flow Ventures and also the founder of Clean Tech North. So many of you may be familiar with him. You know me, I don't think I have to repeat that. But before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from Toronto today, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I would also like to take a few minutes to thank our sponsors and partners, ARX and Reaction Hub, our gold sponsor. Maybe you've heard from them yesterday. Boyd Davies was on the call talking about their new Chemtech commercialization hub that they are creating in Kingston. Thank you also to MyTags, our silver sponsor, and Drystill, our bronze sponsor. And I'd also like to thank our partners, Canada Clean Tech Alliance, Clean Tech North, CSI Climate Ventures, Energy Storage Canada, and the Ontario Sustainable Energy Association, who've helped promote this event and also helped out with logistics. And with that, I'd like to hand over to you, Brian.
Well, thank you very much, Micah, and please do bear with me, everybody. I am fighting a little bit of a bug that is not COVID, apparently, according to the many tests, but I was supposed to be talking to you from the Clean Tech Commons today and decided not to inflict this on anybody else. So if I mute or disappear for a second, please bear with me. With that said, thank you very much, Micah. It is my pleasure to introduce Sandy Shaw, MPP for Hamilton, West, Ancaster, and Dundas. We've had the pleasure of hearing from many different voices discussing their views on clean tech and the role of clean technology in the Ontario economy of today and tomorrow. Sandy is joining us as the critic for the environment, conservation and parks for the NDP. She is widely known for her work in progressive organizations like the Social Planning Council, the United Way, and was the first ever female board chair of the first Ontario Credit Union, which is wonderful. Sandy graduated from the University of Toronto in corporate social responsibility and built innovative projects such as Hamilton's first microloan program and authored Hamilton's first Women and Poverty Report. Sandy, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here as well. And many days I regret that I am not Peter Tabbins myself, and I'm hoping you don't regret that this morning as well. I'll do my best to fill those big shoes.
No, well, we see a fair amount of him here on the Danforth, where I'm based primarily, Danforth and Kawarthas. So it's wonderful to have you here. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what does success look like for you when it comes to the clean tech sector in Ontario, and how can your party and us help you achieve that?
Well, to begin with, I'd like to see the clean tech sector central to our fight against climate change and the climate crisis. And I'm sure you will be aware of the IPCC report yesterday that we continue on this existential track that we're on, not making any progress when it comes to addressing the climate crisis. And so, we need to take this seriously. And I think this success for me would be a sense of urgency that comes from a provincial government. And I would say, and I'm sure many people in Ontario, many of your members will share the sentiment that the last 4 years have been disappointing in terms of not actually making progress. I mean, this was 4 years of lost opportunity. if you ask me. But in fact, it was not just lost opportunity. I mean, we rolled backwards on so many of the things that were already in place. And many industries, many sectors suffered from some of those changes. And so I would like to see, I know with an Ontario New Democratic government, that this would be central to our government. We have put out about 1.5 years ago our Green New Democratic Deal, and we call it the boldest plan ever. I mean, right now it's the only real climate plan that's out there from any party, but we call it the boldest plan. Not just because of the targets that are enshrined there that meet the Paris Accord targets, we match those, but it's bold because it's not just it's a I guess you call it all of government plan. It's a plan that understands that this is not just one ministry's job. It's not an economic development ministry. It's not the Ministry of Natural Resources. It needs to be embedded in everything we do, and the idea that we understand that the climate crisis is, as everyone says, it's a threat, but it's a huge opportunity, and we see it as an economic driver, and that's how we would approach it. And I would just say, finally, I'm proud of the Green New Democratic Deal because it comes with bold targets. It has things that are enshrined in law, but it's a set of values that I think that we all can agree on. And it really focuses on the idea of a just transition. And when we talk about a just transition, it's about equity and affordability and reconciliation. And when we understand that moving forward with the actions that we need to address climate change, when we understand that those are going to impact different communities, different folks differently. People in the north have a different experience than people in the south. First Nations communities, people, marginalized people. If we actually make sure that we are coming up with a plan that keeps those people in focus, everybody then can see themselves in this and can get on board with the work that we should be doing, that we need to be doing right now, or right yesterday, really.
Absolutely. It's we've got a lot of work to do to hit any of our goals for 2030, let alone 2050. And if we're not starting those now, it's kind of like saving for your RSP at age 70. Doesn't work very well.
Exactly.
So I'm glad you brought up the plan, and isn't it just nice to have a plan to begin with? But I'd love to hear about some of the concrete actions that are listed in that plan. Some of the goals that were listed there have any of those changed? Are you seeing any amendments to that plan in the coming days, weeks, months? I'd love to talk about some of those concrete plans.
Sure. So it is a comprehensive plan, as you said, and it is policy. It would become part of our platform. I would say what we are doing now is fleshing it out with details that, in fact, are coming from consultations with organizations like your own. I mean, we have the plan, but we're not experts in all these areas. So it is the plan, but we're putting some more detail into that in terms of the actual actions and technologies, and that's why I'm happy to talk to you today. I just want to say that we focus on, in the plan, we're talking about, we know we have to change how we move. We have to transform our transportation sector. We have to change how we build. So in this, we have a massive retrofit program. It's a massive public investment in incentives and skills training around a retrofit program. We know that we need to look at our electricity grid and our electricity system. And that's huge. That's the huge nut to crack, if you will. And we know that needs to be taken on, that we need a government that's brave enough or courageous enough or smart enough to say that we got to step into this. These are difficult decisions, but we can't keep hitting the snooze button on those decisions, which is what has been happening. And we also want to make sure that we bring opportunities for everyone to be involved in this. So understanding that residential, everyday folks that want to play their part in climate change initiatives need to be brought into this as well. So they need incentives, they need encouragement, they need to be brought along. So, and I think what is most exciting about this is that we do see this as an economic opportunity, as every government should. and that this will include, a massive investment in, as I said earlier, in public investment, but that it'll have job guarantees. So I talked about a just transition. The just transition will also make sure that, workers that are in industries that may be in heavy carbon industries that need to transform, that they're not left behind, that they currently are skilled workers. They have workers that are in industries that can play a role if we actually intentionally understand how they can be part of the solution as well. And so, I mean, you can look at the Green New Democratic Deal. It's very comprehensive. We have incentives for zero emission vehicles. We have incentives for, maybe we'll talk about this later, but we'll have a clean tech bank, which will be of interest to your members, because we understand, that people need capital. They need to have patient capital to come up with the kind of innovations that we need. We have, I would say the other thing about this that is important for us is, and I think I may have said this before, but these targets, even around zero emission vehicles, will be enshrined in law. They won't be just casual. They won't be in just a pamphlet, which is sort of what I feel happens now. There'll actually be legal requirements that we'll put upon ourselves as a government to meet those targets.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you've touched on a bunch of them already, but I mean, the clean tech sector is a hydra. It's a many-headed beast with many different subsectors in it: green chemistry, electric vehicles, batteries, water technologies. We spoke about salamanders and our watersheds a little bit earlier. In your opinion, what are the clean technologies that you think Ontario should be particularly focused on in the coming years? Where should we invest our efforts of all those different areas of clean tech?
So bear in mind what I'm about to say comes from a layman's perspective. I'm not the expert in this. Your members are, but so my comments are going to come from, in some way, a consumer, who would like some of these options. And also from, an MPP who has seen communities that need these kinds of solutions. So I'll quickly tell you that I'm from Hamilton, and we had in Hamilton in this area called Coots. Actually, that's it right there, Coots Paradise. There was a spill, a massive sewage spill of 24 billion liters that spilled into this beautiful, pristine, protected wetland. And it was from our sewage system. And it was a failure in 2 points. It was a regulatory failure, but it was also a systems failure. So when it comes to the way we treat water in our waterways, or the technologies around our sewer and our sanitation system, I would say that is something that we need immediately, because we still in Ontario, just literally part of the plan is to dump sewage into our waterways. Lake Ontario, the sewage gets dumped right into Lake Ontario. And so what I understand with Coots Paradise, the failure was there was a flow meter, without getting too, this is not too technical for your group, it's almost too technical for me, but the flow meter was in a position where there was a tank left open and it was just spilling and spilling and spilling, but the flow meter didn't detect it. It's an old system. We need good green infrastructure, but it's currently as it is, every government's going, oh, that's too expensive. We can't address that. So if we can innovate and incentivize and come up with ways that we can make sure that the way we treat our sewage is does not just continue to pollute our waterways, that would be huge for me personally. And the second thing I want to say really is, I don't know if any of you watched the movie Moneyball. I mean, the whole concept you see between Moneyball is it's not the big, huge home runs that get you to the World Series. It's those, those singles and those doubles, right? And so I think that that's where we need innovation and innovators, and we need to support them and encourage them and nurture that, because it's not going to be one big technology that's going to get us there. I mean, we need battery storage. We need to look into hydrogen. We need to look at sort of all those behind the meter solutions. We need to make sure that consumers can feel like, yeah, I can buy that and I understand how it works. Like hybrid heat pumps, those things should just be available, right? I should be able to go to Home Depot and have a whole section where I can buy those things without having to say, does this exist? I would like a thing that does this. It should just exist. Like heat capture from your hot water, when you drain your hot water to capture that heat. So I've lost my train of thought, but the idea is that we need to be able to nurture this industry and make those solutions available, not just to the industry, but to residential consumers as well.
You said something very important there, and one is taking that systems approach. It's not just one technology. It will be a mix of different technologies for this solution, for this emitter, or for this emitter, and they will all be different interchangeable parts that will work together. And the second thing that you said there that I that really resonated with me is the fact that, you know, nobody knows all the solutions. Nobody knows all of the various different clean technologies that are out there. We have a wonderful, you know, pantheon of different technologies that are available, but it is welcoming the industry into that fold to give you a sense of what the art of the possible is. And I have yet to meet the person that is not absolutely blown away by what the art of the possible is within our own province that we are already producing. And these companies are already in market and are looking to scale and looking for the right environment. And speaking of this market, that leads me to my next question, which is, you know, we have great talent. We have access to capital. We've got more capital flowing in these days, which has been a really big sea change in the last couple of years. And we have great manufacturing know-how in Canada. That being said, a lot of other jurisdictions have a lot of other programs that are leveraging the economic potential of clean tech. Quebec, BC, all of these have different programs, EV mandates, rebates, sustainable building standards programs. What could Ontario do to be able to compete with those jurisdictions, even within Canada, not to mention around the world, you know, in Europe, etc.?
In a word, lots. There's a lot that we can do. And there's so much, if I would just say wasted potential or just untapped potential or pent up potential innovations. It's very exciting what we can do. And we need to be excited about this. And so, you know, I touched on it earlier. I mean, you mentioned innovation. We talked about training. Again, I have to say Hamilton, McMaster University is in my riding. I mean, they have all kinds of innovation hubs here. Yes. So we have the talent, we have the education system, we have all of that ready just to go. Just all it needs is some political will and understanding to light that, you know, match. Although that's not a very carbon friendly expression anyway. I shouldn't talk about lighting a fire, I don't suppose.
Well, yeah, I guess since we now have what is it, electric arc furnaces, we can come up with some sort of electric arc too.
Yeah, I think so. There you go.
That is sourced from green electricity. That was that.
There you go. I like that. But we talked about, but the electric vehicle strategy, let's just say in the Green New Democratic deal, we have a comprehensive strategy that has targets. We'll set provincial-wide zero emission vehicle targets. Not just talk about it. And we'll also look at not just the supply side, which is the government's just lately come to understand after they ripped out charging stations out of the ground and basically closed up an industry. All of a sudden they've had this aha moment. I don't know if it had to do with polling, but whatever it is, at least they're sort of on the right track. But the whole point is that it's also not just supply side, it's demand side. I mean, we don't want to have a province that makes these vehicles, but the market is outside of the province because people can't afford the vehicles. So the fact that there are no market incentives is a huge lost opportunity. It's actually just stupid if you ask me. I don't know if I can just say that. It's like, what makes no sense? And the point is also people want to contribute and play a role, and that's how they're going to do it. And then, you know, the whole idea about how we build. I mean, that's a whole big, huge. I mean, I think Peter will be mad at me if I get this wrong, but I think our buildings are the second largest contributor to greenhouse gas. So again, changing building codes, retrofits, we can have a massive retrofit program that creates jobs, that builds the GDP and helps people save money and energy, and people feel good about the direction that we're going in this province, right?
And just because I like pointing out that we have those technologies, we have companies like Critic that does building envelope inspection for heat loss to figure out where you need to spray your insulation. We have insulation technology companies in Ontario. We have those technologies. It's a question of putting the framework in to help them scale. They're already scaling. Sadly, a lot of them not here. They're scaling in other jurisdictions, which is good for them, but we can leverage them as well. I want to turn to an area that is still sometimes contentious in the clean tech ecosystem, and that is the area of nuclear energy. There are many folks that say that we should phase out nuclear energy. There are many that say we shouldn't, and that it's a very clean source. There's even more that are talking about fusion now. So we've got more discussion on that. But in terms of nuclear energy, how can we do? How can we phase out nuclear energy while making Ontario, helping Ontario be able to move forwards with an electric economy? Should we phase that out even?
Yeah, so this is the big problem, right? This is the big tough nut to crack, as I said earlier. And we know that nuclear power generates about 50% of the energy that we already have in Ontario. So for the foreseeable future, we're going to have to rely on that, and we're going to have to understand what role that will play in the future energy mix, if you will, as we're transitioning. I think that we as a party have expressed and shared actually people's significant concerns, about cost. I mean, is this the most cost-effective energy source in the future? I don't know the answer to that. It's a question that we need to understand, to study. And I think there's remaining concerns about waste and how we handle waste. And so, those are things that we really need to wrestle with. But if we're going to, as you said, move towards a zero carbon economy, we need to do that. We have to look at phasing down, we have gas-fired plants. We need to look at phasing those out. And they're rising, right? Instead of coming down, they're rising as we increase our electrified economy, right? So we have to really, another expression, it's like we have to change the tire while we're driving down the road when it comes to this. So no, absolutely, this is a huge problem. Like it's an enormous problem, and the stakes are really high. We know that. But I guess I would just assure you that an NDP government would base all of our energy decisions, on evidence. Like we need to get the politicians out of the way, and it's not be a political decision. It needs to be a decision based on, good energy planners, sound policy. And, I think that it also fundamentally the fundamental question is, what is in the public interest? What is best in the public interest? When we're looking at reliable, affordable, safe, environmentally sustainable energy sources in the future, stabilizing the grid. Those are the things when it comes to what's in the public interest that needs to be centered in this difficult decision.
It's an interesting point, and beyond even the source of electrons, another interesting question and challenge that we're going to be facing is the grid itself, the capacity needed in that grid. We're already working on making that grid smarter, moving those electrons with a little bit more intelligence. But we have a grid that only sustains a certain amount of electricity down it, no matter what the source.
Right.
And I'd be curious if you've got any thoughts in terms of the grid itself. Looking at decentralizing that grid at all. What would do you have any thoughts on the grid itself?
So yes, but I also rely on folks like you, experts like you. So because the whole idea of decentralizing the grid just makes some sense. I mean, that's what they do. They do this in Europe. They do this in other countries. So we know, I love your expression, the art of the possible. We know that it's possible, and that, we need to make sure that everyone can play a role in this. I mean, the idea that, I think it needs to go beyond just people putting solar panels on their roof, which is great, right? But I think we have the technology, and we can make sure that there are many ways that people collectively can contribute to that. I think, you know, there's interesting talks about hydrogen. Honestly, I'm a proud liberal arts university student. So I'm getting into the, you know, my area where I rely on experts, but the whole idea of, you know, hydrogen to play a role in storage. Hydrogen, I mean, we talk about the discrepancies between different areas of Ontario, like Ontario goes really far north, do you know what I mean? And so I don't know that electric vehicles might be the answer in every situation in Northern Ontario. Like they need bigger vehicles, those large trucks. They might need a hard hydrogen solution. So I don't know, I feel again, like I've wandered away from your question, but the idea is that there's so many innovative, exciting opportunities and people want to play a role in it, whether it's innovators, entrepreneurs, whether it's consumers, whether it's elected officials. You know, so we just need to move on this. We just move on it.
Well, again, to your point, I think the fact that there is no one silver bullet. There's different challenges in different areas that need different solutions, and it's a mix and blend of those that will have to be nimble and adapt to and adopt those. So, want to get back onto a couple of the questions that I've got here. The next one of which is, other countries, such as China, for example, are investing billions in making their heavy industry cleaner. By doing so, these countries are carving out a competitive advantage in the world market. How can Ontario make sure our resources and heavy industry products stay competitive? And I had a great graph that I won't be able to pull up now, but that was doing a comparative history of steel manufacturing that I saw yesterday. Canada through the rest of the world. Very, very, very interesting, particularly with respect to China and their production. So very interested as to how, and particularly given your writing,
Exactly.
some of those, some of that heavy industry is there. How do we stay competitive?
Yeah. So again, important question, and we need to understand to stay competitive. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know that every government understands that to stay competitive, we need to green our industry. We need to green our products. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I worked in corporate social responsibility, and in the fundamental tenet behind corporate social responsibility is it's the right thing to do environmentally, ethically, but it also makes good business sense. And that's the mindset that we have to approach this with. You mentioned Hamilton, it's steel town.
Yep.
We paid heavy attention to China, and surprisingly enough, when it comes to Hamilton. So green steel production, producing green steel is something that is very important, and that we feel in Hamilton we have the metals research center here in Hamilton. We have a long, fine tradition of our steelworkers. We're proud of our steelworker tradition in Hamilton. We have been on the forefront of innovation in North America, and we should be again. And so I think that, I think we need to really, again, harness all the technologies to decarbonize, beyond what is beyond. So we know what is currently possible, but we also need, technologies to even set the bar even higher, to go to where, beyond what we even know we're able to do, so that, we're not just saying, okay, we've got that, we did this, we have to keep, moving. And then the other thing, I wouldn't be a good environmental critic if I didn't just talk about offset programs. I mean, that's the other part of this, right? So, I think the idea is that we need technology, not in our production, in our creation of carbon emissions, but we also need to understand what designing offset programs that are put into the mix of how we meet our targets, our greenhouse gas reduction targets. And so, I talk a lot about restoring wetlands, protecting wetlands, actually talk a lot about, farms and the importance of farms, and also, the like just canceling a tree planting program like that, that was just there's no actual evidence there's no actual financial evidence. There was no scientific evidence that that was the right thing to do. It was the wrong thing to do. People were just like, what? These are easy wins. Some of these things are easy wins, like not paving over wetlands, which is this government has been want to do. But unfortunately, where some of these things are happening or not happening because of an ideological mindset, I would have to say, and a short-term thinking, I would have to say, and also, making decisions based on who will most benefit. I don't know that the decisions that are being made right now are about everyday people benefiting most, or is it select interested parties? Is it people that have a huge financial interest in these decisions? And like, who has the ear of this government? And going back to the top of this discussion, I mean, that's what we will center all of our decisions on. What is best for the people of the province of Ontario, and what's best for, the future for our kids, right? I'm a grandmother, brand new grandmother.
Congratulations. Congratulations. And it's interesting because you already have a bit of a foundation of a plan, which is a good start in those conversations. So
absolutely.
And so my last question, then I'll open it up to you a little bit more, is, governments are tricky beasts. They're made of all sorts of folks. There are multiple different parties that will be running in this summer. How do you plan to work across party lines to make sure that we are developing a clean, resilient, competitive economy that is reducing our carbon footprint and trying to meet our goals for not only 2050, which is a little bit further away, but 2030, which is barreling down on us rather quickly.
Crazy.
How will you build that sort of consensus to move some of these things forward?
Well, I want to start by saying that that's what people expect from their elected officials. They expect that they will do whatever they can to work together in the best interests of the province and the people of the province. So that's an expectation. And I think that it's important, to have that mindset, that openness. I'm just going to say from my personal experience, I haven't seen a government that's prepared to cooperate. They don't actually involve us as the official opposition. And I think it needs to be said that this is a system that we have. It's a parliamentary democracy, and the checks and balances, the role of the official opposition is to hold government to account, but it's also to provide information to make their bills better. To say, hey, have you thought about this? Or I have a constituent, I have McMaster University in my riding, and they're doing this. You might want to consider this. There's been quite a brick wall when it comes to this government listening to us, which maybe don't listen to us. I get it, but they're also not listening to the people of the province. They don't hold committee meetings on bills like they should. There's a bill before the House that they've just put in that's going to pass in 2 days, important bill. So that's not really the way that that we should be operating. But when it comes to the climate crisis, this should not be a partisan issue. This is something that we all need to be open to good solutions, whether it comes from us, whether it comes from industry, because no matter what party comes up with them, a responsible government would say, hey, that's a good idea. Hey, this is important. And we'll include that in our policy or our bills. And so that's the mindset that I would bring to this. I know that's the mindset that, Andrea Horvath brings to this. She tries so often to get this government to work with us, and they don't, but we are looking forward to it. We would relish, how do I say this? We would relish a new formulation of a government that would be cooperative and would work for goals, not for their own political partisan interests.
Wonderful, wonderful. I've asked a lot of questions, so I want to turn the floor over to you a little bit more and just to ask, is there anything else that you'd like to tell our community? We've got a lot of investors. We've got international investors that are eyeing Canada and Ontario for their clean technologies. We have a just a wonderful ecosystem of clean technology companies that employ thousands and thousands of people and are growing. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to them or to us about what your plans would be in that potentially new mixed government?
Well, I just want to, I'll end with saying that all of this feels very exciting to me. It feels like maybe, spring is coming, maybe we're entering into a new phase. There's a cautiously optimistic that we're coming out of these dark years, if you will. And that includes our movement on innovation and climate technology, clean technology. So I am really grateful to your members, and I am grateful to the innovation and the hard work and the entrepreneurship that they're committed to. Having said that, I know that it's not just words that they need. I mean, I know that these are expensive, life-consuming endeavors. The risks that you take to do something that will benefit all of us, for the good of all of us, should be recognized and rewarded and supported. So I mentioned earlier in our plan, we have, we're going to have the clean tech bank that will be funded out of a cap and trade program. That we understand the idea of, patient capital. We understand the idea of grants, not loans. Like probably most small businesses, startups are drowning in debt right now. So we understand that role. In capital depreciation, some of those things are easy wins too, right? So I think the idea of tax incentives, market incentives, capital, those are the things that we want to play our part of what you are doing for all of us. And so, I would again encourage you and your members to look at the Green New Democratic deal. If there are things in there that you think, hey, in the spirit of cooperation, go, hey, you could have added this, or this is not exactly how it works out here in the clean tech world, please get in touch with me or Peter Tabbins or our party. That's how we make things better, and that's how we can work together. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It's really exciting, and it's been my pleasure to be here with you today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And a few points just resonated with me there. One, grants, not loans. Yes, there's a lot of debt out there, but scaling takes a bit of a different, a wide mix of different capital. And certainly on the tax credit side of things, we've got some policy work that Optia has put together with a number of different recommendations. One of which is on the R&D tax credit side on the clean tech, so topping up the SHRED program and things like that to incentivize greater R&D into clean technologies. So Sandy, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing updates. I'm looking forward to chatting with you about some of the propositions that Optia has put forward. And I just really appreciate you spending time with us and our members. Thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure. I had a great time. Thank you for your great questions, and best of luck to you and your members, and hope you're feeling better soon.
Thank you very much. Mikey?
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of a closing, and just to build up on what Brian said, we're happy, Sandy, to keep the conversation going because I think it needs to be a dialogue, and we have lots of ideas, and even if we don't have ideas, we can go back to the membership and say, hey, what do you think of this or that? Maybe, just a proposal to take advantage of us as a channel and voice for the industry.
It's a generous offer, and I'd be happy to take you up on that.
Great. Yeah, that sounds good. All right. So, and I think I'll wrap it up here. Quick announcement. We are finishing our Clean Tech Week at the park tomorrow with a fireside chat with the Green Leadership Duo, Mike Schreiner and Diane Sachs. So if you haven't registered, I think it's going to be equally interesting. And then thanks again, Sandy, for making the time today to talk to us. It's been very interesting to hear more details about the ONDP's plan on how to transition to a clean economy, and to get some details on that. Yeah, I think We're more than happy to have you here. Okay, all right, let's wrap up, and hopefully I'll see many of you tomorrow afternoon. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Mikey.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Andy. Take care.